Hey, welcome back. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the concept of being dynamic and why it's so important for our government to be continuously dynamic in its nature. Now, you might be saying to yourself, I have no idea what that means. Well, you're in luck. Stay tuned and you'll find out. Make sure you're in your interactive notebook. Okay, we're on page 5 of your interactive notebook. Before we start taking notes, let's talk about something. Think about this. Since our government has been formed, since the beginning of our country, what is something that has changed? You can probably come up with a whole slew of things that have changed since the 1700s. A few that I came up with, think about family life has definitely changed. Fashion has definitely changed. The way we take pictures has changed. I've included a photo here of just some random family I found from the 1700s versus my family. Just in pictures, the way that we take them, much less formal. We're not dressed up to the nines. It's very, very different. Think music. Music is 100% different. Think Sebastian Bach and Mozart and whatever. But now we have much more updated tempos and tunes and whatever, the way that we access music, the way that we share music, all of those things have changed. And these are these are things that aren't necessarily related to government, but they've definitely changed over the years. If we do look at something that's a little bit more political, let's look at the first Congress versus 2018's elected members to Congress, or newly elected members. So this isn't the full Congress, but these were people that were elected in 2018. On the left, you've got the new Congress in 1789 or 17 whatever. It's a bunch of old white dudes. It is. If you fast forward to this picture in 2018, you can see ladies, you can see color, and I don't just mean in their dresses and their clothes. You see changes, you see differences. So definitely since the beginning of our nation, we're not the same people. We don't have the same ideas. We don't have the same values. Some of our core values are still there, but a lot of things have changed. And so for this reason, and this is where you want to start taking notes, we want to talk about what does it mean to be dynamic? Because again, that's what we're talking about here today. The formal definition of something that is dynamic: it's characterized by constant change, activity, or progress. So dynamic is a synonym for the word change. We have to constantly be changing in our government in order for it to survive. And this is something that the founding fathers realized way back in 17 whatever, that in order for our nation to survive and progress and grow and last, they'd have to have this element to it where it could change if it needed to. So what do we mean by that? The dynamic nature of government means that American government has the ability to change if needed. It has the combination of some formal balances. We have 3 branches of government that are governed by the U.S. Constitution. But we also have some traditions, things that kind of haven't changed, that we do, she said over time. Think like the election cycle, the inaugural process, things like that. We are still doing some of the same things. But then we also have precedent court cases, where those court cases can be reviewed upon and then possibly updated and changed. We have the way in which we interpret the Constitution. There are 2 different views on that. There's the strict interpretation, and then there's the loose interpretation. Strict meaning we follow every single thing in the book or in the document. Loose meaning we can be a little bit loosey-goosey. It's kind of up for interpretation. It's, we don't want to say make up things as we go, but we kind of read through the lines a little bit more. Whereas the other people are like, no, it says we do X, Y, and Z. Think about it like strict interpretations it's black and white. The loose interpretation is going to see a little bit gray area here and there. So what does this mean when we talk about like the U.S. Constitution? If you didn't know this, the U.S. Constitution is actually the oldest written constitution still in use today. So go us. Way to go, framers of the Constitution. It is the United States rule book. That's what we like to call it. But it does allow for change. So how does it do that? We have a separation of powers, this idea of checks and balances. No one branch is higher than the other, and each branch can check and hold the other branches accountable. We have the amendment process. This is ways in which that we can change the Constitution. So the first 10 amendments are the Bill of Rights. And then from there, we have 17 after that, where if there's something that needed to be changed, we changed the Constitution. For example, at one time in American history, there was no term limit on the presidency. You could run and win as many times as you want. And then in the mid 30s and 40s, they decided to amend that and say, nope, we only want you to have 2 elections or 2 terms. So there's a 2-term limit. That was a way in which the government changed. Also, legislation and judicial review. We talked about on the previous slide about precedent court cases, and we'll talk more in a future lesson about these precedent court cases. But the judicial review process allows that if there's a law or an amendment or something that is unconstitutional, the courts have the power to review it and say, no, it goes against the Constitution. Let's change it. And that has happened a few times in American history. So what happens if a government fails to change? What happens if they fail to be dynamic? Unfortunately, it's going to lead to unrest. It's going to lead to that it's not appealing to citizens, that they're going to want to overthrow it. Think about the United States of America. We were founded on the concept that we didn't agree with those who were governing us way across the pond. We didn't want to be governed by a king in England. So we said, deuces, we're out of here, and fought a whole revolution over it. It wasn't that short and sweet, but you get my point. Changes have to be slow. It's not something that can be done overnight. And you also can't do like a million changes. It has to be a process, because you don't want to change overnight. You don't want to be getting ahead of yourself. You want to take it slow and easy. Yes, you want to be open to change, but it's not just like boom, 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 because you might get too far ahead of what the public and the people actually need. So again, in this video, we've been talking about why it's important for a government to be dynamic, why we have to be always up for and kind of roll with the punches and be open to change. In future lessons, we're going to talk about some examples where we do see the government being dynamic in the cases of voting rights and Supreme Court cases. So stay tuned for those lessons and make sure you have these in your interactive notebook. Thanks for watching.